welcome to the fourth edition of the Non-League podcast. It's James Noble presenting this week. I'm honoured to be taking up the presenting chair, formerly inhabited by today's three. Well, I was about to call you guests, but I'm not sure that kind of that's the correct terminology. But we've got Ben Robinson, Jake Adams, and Harvey Hinkler in the studio too. So we'll be discussing events going on all around the National League and other areas of non-league over the last week or so. So we're going to start this week with what were two very surprising results at the top of the National League. The leaders, Leyton, Orient, and currently the kind of closest chasers, Salford, who are only a point behind them, both falling to defeats to Boreham Wood and Chesterfield respectively. So I'm just going to dot round the three panellists and see what their thoughts were on these three results, because I don't think any of us really saw these coming, did we? So what did you make of it, Ben?
I thought I didn't even realise there was an early kick-off. It was only till someone in the press box went, "Oh, Leyton Orient lost." I was like, "Oh, brilliant!" So then I thought, "Oh well, Salford here could catch up," and I was like, "Oh, could make it interesting." But no, they decided to slip up as well. I think it makes it very interesting now because you've got Harrogate and Wrexham closing them in. Wrexham got a game in hand. They could draw level with them, and Harrogate being 3 points behind and 4 points behind Leyton Orient. This could be very interesting, especially going into the busy Christmas period. It just spices it up a bit, and like other people in the playoffs are winning and getting results, and it's certainly turned out to be a very good finale to the end of this calendar year. I think I don't know who they've got next. I think they've got like cup games coming up soon. Yeah, they do. FA Trophy. But then Chesterfield, who tripped up Salford, eventually won a game since August. Indeed. And they'll be one of the best teams in the league, if not like the best team.
Adam Rooney FC.
Even he couldn't save them, which
no.
says a lot.
But the next game in the league for Leyton Orient is against Chesterfield, so could it be another tripping stone?
Yeah,
that works.
No, I like that term.
I don't.
Would you? Yeah, I think you make a good point, Ben. Would you agree, Jake, that kind of it makes the league that bit more interesting heading into the Christmas period, because it is that bit more kind of compact now in the kind of upper third of it?
I think as soon as you get into Christmas, obviously there's a large portion of games played over that period, very tight. It's a good show for the team's rotation. Of course, teams don't really have much depth at this level, so it opens up the league nicely with these two results at the weekend. It does seriously have Harrogate and teams like them. If they can get some momentum going over Christmas with all these games getting played, it'll be nice to see what can happen.
Yeah, it is looking tight up there now. I mean, we've got as Ben said, you've got Harrogate, Wrexham, Solihull Moors, Fylde, and Gateshead, who are the other teams, along with Salford in the playoff spots. I think we all felt last week when we were discussing it that Salford and Leyton Orient were kind of the two main contenders for that automatic slot. Does that kind of change your outlook on it at all, Harvey, or is it still in your mind? Do they still kind of look the two strongest contenders for?
I'm happy to eat my words, because I were convinced a couple of weeks ago that Orient were just going to storm the league, and I do think that Orient and Salford are still the two main contenders for the title, but it's been blown a bit more wide open now, and we're smack bang in the middle of the season. Well, it's still a long way to go, and with teams like, look at Solihull Moors are only 6 points off, only played 23 games, and they're down in 5th. So it's anyone's title. It's who can grab it by the scruff of the neck and really go into the second half of the season with intent. And it is a case of who trips. It's like a bit of wacky races sort of. It's like who slips up and who can get the advantage because of it.
Yeah.
Who slips over the banana skin, and this weekend it was Orient and Salford. But it could be next week. It could be Wrexham losing and slipping up, and it could be Harrogate and Orient and Salford could both win, and then that gap's there again. So you never know. You've got to take it on a weekend by weekend basis. I think especially with how many teams are in the mix at the minute.
Yeah, it's certainly looking well. It's nicely set up before Christmas, which I think from the neutral perspective, which I suppose we all are to some extent. Maybe aside from Gateshead to an extent, it's what you want really. And yeah, so the teams in the kind of immediate chasing pack, obviously Harrogate we mentioned, Wrexham, Shrewsbury, they all won their matches.
Shrewsbury.
No, not Shrewsbury. Hang on, that's
dropped down a couple of leagues.
He's jumping the gun on the next scoop.
I am jumping the gun. Sorry, Shrewsbury fans, you're in League One. I'm trying to give you double relegation.
They deserve it. It's fine.
And so Harrogate and Wrexham. Harrogate won against Aldershot Town, and that was a particularly interesting story because their centre back Warren Burrell went and scored a hat trick after not scoring in his previous 48 games. He decided to go down the old London bus route and pop up with three at once. Can any of you guys remember a similar scenario with any defenders scoring kind of like, well, I suppose you could say two or three.
Aidan Flint.
Yeah.
At Bristol City, their promotion season in League One, he was prolific. I think he was, if not their top or second top scorer the year they went up in League One.
Yeah.
I remember can't remember who was it against, but he did get a hat trick one week. But it would be very often that it'd be every other weekend that he'd pop up with braces.
It's good in the airs.
Yeah, set pieces.
Everything. He's got to one with a left foot, I think.
Yeah, because I remember he scores against us every time we play him. Like, we played him last season and he scored. It was a proper striker's finish. Like they beat us. They scored against us in last minute. Crossed at back post. He just controlled volley into back at net. He could play centre forward if he wanted to. Probably at a lower level, but he's probably one of the best goal scoring defenders I've ever seen.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that makes a big difference in a team as well, because it does just mean that it's another route to goals, isn't it? At the end of the day, and it means whether it's from set pieces or wherever, if you've got a defender who can actually finish in those scenarios, they're going to be an attribute to the team.
100%.
And trying to be a bit mysterious here, that does have a vague link to one of the quiz questions towards the end of the show. So
it's fine. I've already forgotten it.
Try and keep it in mind as difficult as it may be. So to the other teams in the chasing pack, Solihull Moors and Fylde didn't have such successful weekends. Solihull Moors, they drew 2-2 at Sutton, which isn't a bad result by any means, but there was quite a lot of frustration that they hadn't held out for the victory, because they've been in front twice, and because of how good their defensive record had been recently. Sutton were clearly quite satisfied to have scored against them twice. Yeah, but obviously Solihull view that as kind of a drop in their standards from recent weeks. And Fylde is that's almost an even more extreme example, because they were 1-0 up at Dover, and in the 63rd minute, I think it was, Dover also had a man. 83rd minute. I think they had a man sent off in the 63rd, and then conceded. It's alright. And and then 83rd and 93rd minutes, as logic tends to work, Dover popped up and scored twice to win the game. Does that kind of represent an example of it being, in certain scenarios, more difficult to play against 10 men, would you say, Ben?
Yeah, I think also I don't know why this keeps happening recently in the conference where teams are going into the last 10 minutes or so, and then they've fallen apart, or the results are changing completely. But I think when the away trip's hard enough, and then you're 1-0 up, and then someone gets sent off, I think the away fans will probably feel a bit let down by that, especially going into the last half an hour of the match if he got sent off then.
It was Dover. They were down to 10 men.
Was Dover down to 10 men? All right. Well, they're at home, so it makes it a lot easier for them. I don't know how they managed to come back then. I mean, that must have been quite a spirit to fight from them, especially to Fylde, who are miles above them in the league. Dover, I think Dover's still in the relegation zone, but that win must be so significant to help them climb up a bit, or at least gain a bit of confidence, a bit of momentum going, hopefully for them to get out of it, really, because they've been quite a good team in the conference the past few years, so I'm quite surprised at where they are. But Fylde must be even more gutted for the fact that they were Dover were down to 10 men, and then they've travelled all that way, and to lose it in the 90th minute is it's pretty gutting feeling, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I know Fylde were obviously very, very frustrated to have let it slip towards the end, and their manager post match was speaking about he didn't care what time they got back that evening, whether it was like 4 a.m. or however late, because obviously it's quite a trip down there to Dover. But he was saying either way they're in the next morning, because he was obviously really unhappy with the way they kind of, as you say, crumbled towards the end. Do you think, Jake, it's possible it could even be an issue kind of as simple as fitness in some scenarios like these, where teams obviously perform to a certain level for maybe 2/3, 3/4 of a match, but then just have a drop off towards the end? Could that be an issue at this level? Obviously, fitness levels tend to be better nowadays, but at the National League, could that still make a difference, do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you make a very valid point when you talk about how teams perform well for the first 2/3 of the game and tend to drop off. Like, since starting this podcast, literally every game I see, most of its goals coming in the last third of the game. I don't know what that's down to, if it's just pure defending concentration. It could be down to like fitness, it could just be down to that kind of leadership which like some teams don't really have at this level. I think it's more of an array of other things. Obviously, I think if talk about fitness being an issue, it's got to be an issue at this level. It's just got to be, because like teams don't have the facilities, the players aren't training as much or at the standard is what the more professional players are in the Premier League, for example. So that like fitness issue obviously doesn't help them one bit at this level, which is why we're seeing like a lot of goals going.
Yeah, it's it does seem to be something that's more common at this level than maybe as you start to progress up the leagues. But how valuable, Harvey, would you say is kind of in those scenarios the ability to be one of the stronger teams in the latter stages of the game and kind of be able to come on strong if indeed other teams in the division start to kind of drop off in the latter stages? The likes of Salford and Leyton, Orient, kind of shown signs in recent weeks of being better. Is that can be a sign of a very good team at times?
I think it's a lot when there's a lot of teams involved like there are now. Stage of the season, it's about staying power and how consistent you can be in putting out performances, and even not putting out performances, churning out results, because often the best sides win when they don't play well, and you see it like, and to get promotion in any division you need that. So, and I feel that is one thing that lets Salford down, where Salford, if they play well, they might burn through a team and 3-4-0, but when they don't play well, they don't really seem to be picking up the results. I think they need to find, don't know what that is, I don't know what David Flitcroft has to put into them to get it. That is David Flitcroft, isn't it? I've not just completely fluffed my lines there. My brain went blank for a second, and I was like, I'm 90% sure.
Either way, this was
not
quite the Shrewsbury level.
But no, I think
Splash, man.
I think that they just need. Oh no, is it?
It said Mansfield.
No, it's not Flitcroft. It's Graham Alexander. I think I've got him confused. The guy who used to manage Scunthorpe.
Yeah, no, I knew right.
No, it is Graham Alexander.
It is
isn't
Graham
Yeah.
Alexander, yeah, because they both used to manage Scunthorpe. Leave me alone. But no, if they have to stay in power, it's just something that they need to find to be able to get those results when they've not played so well.
Yeah.
Because like I say, the best teams always do it. They get promoted in any division.
Yeah, it's it does seem to be a pattern, as you say. Almost whatever level of football you're at, that if you can have kind of that solid backbone, that means, as you say, if you're not on your game, you've still got the ability to grind a result out. It makes such a big difference. And yes, so now moving on to the lower end of the table, where that kind of staying power, as we're talking about, and ability to grind out results is obviously less common. There's been a bit of kind of politics. I'm not sure is the right word, but a bit of sort of poking of Lee Bradbury, who's the current manager of Haventon Waterlooville, by Hartlepool, who have now appointed a manager, but they in the end appointed Richard Money, who was formerly manager of or coach of Newcastle's youth sides. Was it?
Yeah.
We were discussing.
I mean, pick a name out of the hat for the teams he's been a part of, like coaching and managerial wise.
As well.
He's been around the block. So with that level of experience, Ben, would you say that it's a wise appointment? He obviously kind of knows kind of what to do in different scenarios, managing different teams. Do you think he's the man to kind of turn around Hartlepool's season?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, they're not having an awful season, but for a team of Hartlepool, you sort of expect them to be up in and around the playoff places, really. But he's managed Cambridge before. I think he was the manager when they went up and beat Gateshead coincidentally in the final. Yeah, I think having that experience, especially in I think it's actually more key in the lower divisions, because it's not just about motivation, but when the players think psychologically, this guy knows what he's talking about, this guy knows these teams, then you might know the weaknesses of the other teams or the strengths, so you know how to play it. Tactically, it's a lot better. Even if he's not great tactically, at least he's got that knowledge to help him and that past experience, and even the know-how with the players and how to talk to them and how to treat them, because he knows how they'll be feeling. So I think the connection's got to be better. I think as long as they can revitalise something there, and if they get it right, then I don't see why they couldn't push this year. It's such a tight area, the playoffs, that I think with the second half push of the season, if they got, I don't know, a few signings in, and like I say, got the results and grind it out like Harvey's talking about before, then I don't see why they can't push this year. Then.
Said that in his interview as well. He said that it's not going to be pretty at Hartlepool. Like I said, he said this in his first interview as manager, and he just said that they are going to have to grind out results, and that's what he wants to instill in the team. And I think it's a clever appointment, because I think Lee Bradbury would have been a good appointment from Haventon or Louisville, but I'm glad that they didn't go with the we saw that Neil Redfern, Lee Clark, they were all in the mix, because it is always tempting to go for the big name, because they'd all applied for the job. It is always tempting, like Lee Clark especially up in the northeast, it is easy just to go for that big name, but I think Money and Bradbury were the two better options, cause like younger managers, like I think a better example of it in the higher leagues at the minute is Aston Villa appointing Dean Smith, because you look at the name and the club and you think, is it really? What is he at Villa's standards? But he's a good manager, has a good way of going about things, and I think Money can be that for Hartlepool as well. But he's got the right attitude going in. Some people might not like his saying just going in grinding out results, but with the situation that Hartlepool were in, they went 9 games without a win before this weekend, winning 1-0. But yeah, they need to know how to grind out results. So I think he's a good appointment.
Yeah,
as long as they show him the money.
Indeed, yeah. In fact, it's a ready-made headline, isn't it? That appointment potentially. Yeah, and I mean, I think you do make an important point, kind of, Ben, on the effect he could have on the players, because obviously he has that experience and he obviously had a decent footballing career himself as well. That can sometimes, I think, lead players to maybe have a bit more respect, or kind of be more sort of G'd up by a manager in certain scenarios. And obviously, I think, as you said, Harvey, there can sometimes be a bit of an emphasis on appointing names over kind of what they've actually done in the game. Do you feel, Jake, that this is an example of an appointment that's sort of been well thought out, rather than kind of a sort of panic buying manager terms, so to speak?
No, I think it's been a clever appointment by them, to be fair. Of course, the lads touched on it already. He's got pedigree at this level. Of course, Ben's saying that his manager who got Cambridge promoted, so he can get them out of the division. I don't think that's obviously going to be the aim for them this season. It's more survival, if anything. And then again, just to kind of like elaborate on what Harvey's already touched on about. He said he's wanting to instill that kind of grit into them, trying to grind out those results. I think he's a manager who will obviously like try and instill that straight away. Of course, Hartlepool are in need of that at the moment, so should be interesting to see what you can do in his time there. Yeah.
It's another one of a number of interesting stories that are developing throughout the Northern League. I'm going to come belatedly to Ben now on looking back at Gateshead's game at the weekend, kind of linking into one of the sides at the lower end of the table, because they were up against Bromley, who are currently sat 18th, 3 points clear of the relegation zone, and only above Havant and Waterlooville, courtesy of goal difference. So they were up against Gateshead at the weekend. Gateshead came out on top. What kind of game was it, Ben, and what were your observations?
It looked like there were 2 leagues apart, because I mean, Gateshead, they looked good, but like it wasn't. Bromley didn't put up much of a fight. You could see they weren't really at it. They weren't really at the races. And then as soon as Gateshead got that goal, you thought, oh dear, this could be an onslaught. And Gateshead did press for more goals, but it was just a lack of finishing touch, really. And then Bromley nearly. Obviously, I'll go more detail about the game later. But yeah, I think it's always worrying when you're down there and you watch your team play and you just think they really don't want this. They really don't want to win, because when you see that attitude from the crowd becomes negative and then passes down to the players, and then they both know, and there's some of the younger players might feel more pressure then, because they're like, we've got to make up for this now. We've got to do the extra thing. I know I break things down into tiny little pieces.
It's just like feeding a child with Ben. Cut him to little pieces so he doesn't choke on it. He'll still manage to choke.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's just like it seemed a bit negative as well. There was someone there who for Bromley. I think he comes to Southern Uni. I can't think his name. But he was there for Bromley because I think he came from around that area, and we were saying, so what would you rate your team out of 5? He was just like, I wouldn't even give them any stars. And we were saying who his highlight player would be, and it's like, there's honestly no one I can look at here who stood out. I mean, their first chance of the game came 70-80 minutes in, and you're like, wow, like they didn't look up to it that day. No,
not the races.
No. So it seems then that down there at Bromley that there's a problem with morale in some ways. And Jake, would you say that almost even more so when you're at the lower end of the table, you're battling, you're grafting, you're trying to survive, that togetherness between players, fans, the club as a whole is even more important than if you're being reasonably successful within a season?
Yeah, definitely, I'd agree with that. That camaraderie at that level is what is needed to get you out of these holes. Like, which is why you see teams. As soon as teams start going on a bad run of form, it is like a huge notable slump, which we've like noticed with like Chesterfield drawing a lot. Of course, we touched on Braintree last week. Obviously, like 15 losses so far this season. So they're like another team who's in a slump and just can't get out of it. It's a tough one to answer, really. I'd say, because like of course you want the like fans and that to help, but like how are fans gonna find the motivation to support a team when the players aren't giving it back on the pitch? It can't get push pull because it's got to come from both sides, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think as you both say, it's very much a two-way thing, really, because naturally fans feed off players, players feed off fans. We see it in at every level of the game, and it makes such a big difference. And you touch on Braintree. That's a conveniently placed link.
Segue.
Indeed. They were beaten 2-1 at Hampton Waterlooville over the weekend, who did well to win that game, actually, not only because they won the game in the 90th minute, but also because of all the discussion that had been surrounding their manager and whether he would or wouldn't be with them. And Harvey, on Braintree, the fact they equalised quite late in the game, but obviously then still went on to lose it. Is that just an example of when you are at the bottom end of the table, you tend to, for one reason or another, teams have more of a knack of just giving up a result towards the latter end of games, not getting that luck. Things just don't go your way for one reason or another.
Yeah, I think when it rains it pours sometimes at the bottom of the table, and I think Braintree are an example of that because they've not been on good form, and that's down to their own doing. But sometimes luck is a factor of it, and some things will go against you in a season, and it feels 10 times worse when you're down at the bottom. I just feel like they got unlucky because I thought a point might have been a fair result at the weekend, but you've just got to try and see them now. Them points away from home at the bottom of the table are crucial if you can pick up, because you won't pick up many. But yeah, they were unfortunate, but it's just one of those things they've got to look at and think, right, how do we move on from this, and how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again?
I think also getting a point would have it stops then having Waterlooville getting away from them, really, doesn't it? So it's I think even keeping the teams around you just at least down there for you to eventually pick up form and give you a chance of staying up. But I think they're really stuck now, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, that's another very good point, actually, because it's so easy just to think of it in terms of how disappointing it is from Braintree's perspective, but as you say, it widens the gap. It makes it seem like an even more daunting task trying to get out of the relegation zone. They're 9 points away from safety now. Chesterfield are on 23 points. They're on 14 points. Also making up the relegation zone are Maidenhead in 21st on 21 points, and then Maidstone on 19, Dover on 18, and down to Braintree on 14. So those are 4 teams down there who are really looking to. They need a good Christmas period, really, and as we touched on last week, it's such a valuable time of year, because if you can come into it on a good run of form, then potentially it could be a season turner. Is there anyone within that group, Jake, that you look at and think has the best chance of getting out? Obviously Dover had a brilliant result this weekend, so the likes of them, is it possible to see them digging themselves out of this hole because of the nature of the congested period and the ability to maintain momentum?
Yeah, I can't think of one side I can definitely say right now who I can see definitely surviving, because each team's kind of had their own traits as to why they're there, whether it's bad defending or just being genuinely terrible in the case of Braintree, sorry. So I don't really think that's the case, but of course, like I've mentioned earlier when talking about the other side of the table, like it's just same at the bottom. There's a lot of games over Christmas, so of course, like you mentioned with Dover, they've got a big win last weekend. So that if they can build on that over the Christmas period, it could fire them up the table by the time January rolls around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it does represent an opportunity. The Christmas period is there anyone you look at, Harvey, as a potential kind of, well, I'm not sure if you'd call it a great escape candidate at this stage, but someone who could turn things around over the Christmas period, who's kind of showing signs of sparking a recovery of some kind?
I think, well, like mentioned there, Dover, a win like that against Fylde at the weekend in the manner that they won, down to 10 men, scoring 2 late on against a good side, I think that shows character, and they showed last season how good they could be, only narrowly missing out on the playoffs last year. But I'd say if I had to pick one, it would be them. But like I say, halfway through the season, it's so hard to make such a prediction on who's going down, who's going up, especially how tightly packed everything is in the National League at the minute, which makes it exciting. Which I think there should be more eyes on the podcast. On the podcast, yes, there should be more eyes. That's because what you just put in group chat, Jake. You put me off. Yeah. Well, there should be more eyes on the podcast, yeah, or more ears to the podcast. So please do tell your friends. But no, there should be more eyes on the National League because it is a very exciting division, and some people might criticise the style of football that's played sometimes, but no, I think be an interesting second half of the season at both ends is what I'll go with.
Yeah, it's it is a division that I think, as you say, seems to be getting steadily more attention, but yeah, probably still warrants more because, as you say, I think the level of football down there is season on season getting better, and it's naturally very, very competitive. And this weekend, sort of more than any other, has kind of shown the competitive nature of the division. So it is one that's very much kind of, I think its profile is being raised, but it's getting towards it is a division that deserves a bit more attention. Now we're going to have a brief look at the FA Cup. There are 4 non-league teams remaining in it. We've got Solihull Moors, obviously of the National League, Southport of the National League North, Barnet of the National League, and Woking, who are the lowest ranked team left in the competition of the National League South. Now Southport go to Tranmere Southport host Tranmere, on Monday night, and Solihull Moors go to Blackpool the following evening, with a third round tie home against Arsenal, the reward, while Barnet visit our very own Harvey's Sheffield United, and Woking travel to Watford. Now I'm going to take the obvious route here and ask Harvey about that third round tie.
The biggest tie of the third round, yeah,
absolutely.
I'm sure it's going to be a sellout.
What are your feelings ahead of it? Obviously Sheffield United will be favourites on paper because of the 3 division gap that there is between the sides, but are you worried at all by obviously the prospect of a non-league team coming to Bramall Lane, and obviously it's a big game for them, game of their season so far? And
yeah, they'll want to come with a lot of energy, and they'll be getting like pumped up a bit more, and like the thing United will just have to do is get an early goal to try and shut down that like type of momentum. And like if they keep it going, if United can get on top, because we will rotate, like it is a cup game against a non-league side, we will rotate. I think we'll still be good enough to win the game, but I'll try and be as unbiased as possible. But Barnet do have quite a few good players, but I think against a team in a fair few division tie, if we're pushing for promotion in the into the Premier League, don't think we'll get it. But once we get a couple of goals, there'll just be no security for their defence. Like it could just be like 4-5. I'm hoping anyway, but I could be completely wrong, and it could be the shock of the round, Barnet winning there. But I think that it could be a nasty afternoon for Barnet.
Yeah, on paper, Sheffield United do look to be the favourites. Ben and Jake, the other ties, obviously Southport, Tranmere, and Blackpool, Solihull are second round replays, and Woking, Watford looks an interesting tie in the third round. Out of those three, I'll come to Jake first. Is there one that stands out as a potential giant killing?
Definitely won't be either Blackpool or Solihull moves being Arsenal. Definitely not.
Yeah.
They'll be gifted the Lucas Torreira masterclass again. I do like the look of Woking Watford. Definitely, yeah. It's got a really kind of old school kind of FA Cup vibe to it. When you look at it, it could be a game which Woking end up doing the impossible and beat Watford. Of course, very unlikely, but hey, that's the magic of the FA Cup, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is obviously a competition that consistently just throws up the odd amazing result. And are there any there that stand out for you, Ben, or is it kind of the same really? Woking Watford looks like a potential banana skin.
I feel like Watford, they're the sort of team you cannot really trust to put a bet on, really.
Yeah.
I think they end up they look really good one week and then the next they're not. So I think the FA Cup could be a really tricky one for them. Really. I think.
Yeah, I mean their form just briefly trying to turn this into a Premier League Premier League podcast briefly, but Watford's form in recent weeks has really dipped. So you do wonder if that's still the case come the end of the Christmas period, whether it does look like a game where Woking maybe, I'm sure they'll be licking their lips either way because of the nature of the tie, but it's one where an upset isn't beyond the realms of possibility by any means. We're gonna move on now to our respective games of the week. So this will be, I'm right in saying we're looking back this week, are we? At games games from the previous weekend. So I'll start with Harvey. Which game have you gone for?
I was looking at Fylde and Dover and Fylde, but we've gone into discussion on that, so I've decided to look in the National League North, where Spennymoor Town picked up a 7-1 win away at Alfreton, which to score 7 goals in general, but away from home is ridiculous, and it's helped them into the playoff places in the National League North. They're on a bounced back from a 3-1 loss at home to Stockport earlier on in the week, in midweek. But that win, to get that many goals away from home, I think Alfreton have been coming away from that game very, not just disappointed, I think you come off embarrassed if you're a home side conceding that many in front of your home fans, because you're there to provide like a result for those supporters that pay them. Obviously you're not going to get it every week, but no side should be losing 7-1 at home. And I just wonder what impact that's going to have on the players, because it was like a ghost ride eventually for Spennymoor, because completely dominated, and I think by the end of it, Alfreton were just hoping the fans made peace and not war by the end of it with that result.
I think Alfreton won the conference not that long ago.
No, they weren't.
Yeah, I mean those kind of results, as you say, they can be toxic, can't they? Potentially, as you say, it's and scoring 7, as you say, in any context is impressive, but away from home particularly. Which one have you gone for, Jake?
So I've chosen a side. It's a game involving a side which has got some form of allegiance to me, Hungerford Town. They played Chippenham at the weekend. Hungerford are a side in the National League South. Quite an unfortunate side when you have a look at, like, of course money's not really big of a thing in those divisions, but they're really unfortunate with it. They're very financially struck at the moment, so that's seen them slump this season. They were second bottom before this game, but they ended up winning this game 2-1 against Chippenham, who are a side mid-table, so it was a really good result. And it was 1-1 for most of the game after Hungerford equalised actually on the 66th minute. Then a goal from Foxley in the last minute of the game has won them the game, which is a point like we touched on it before. We're talking about sides at the bottom of the table in the National League. It's sides like those need to be grinding out these type of results to stay up, and that's what Hungerford's doing in this division.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, late goals they're just such a boost, aren't they?
It's just like I said earlier. There's like loads of them in these divisions. Always late goals.
Yeah, which is actually, as we touched on, it's another attraction of them, knowing that these games they kind of peak late, so to speak. Even if the teams themselves might not be peaking late, so to speak, the games themselves seem to get more exciting as they go on. Which is from the neutral perspective, it's an enjoyable pattern. So, Ben, which game did you go for this week?
I might have to say Gator, but that's just mainly because I went to the game. It was a very interesting game because Gator really had a go at them. The woodwork was hit 3 times, 2 goals from 2 corners. One of them was a sort of your typical sort of not lower league goal. I don't know how to put it. Not Sunday league either. The corner was whipped in and it sort of bounced. But Armstrong, it's one of those goals where it's like you just get something on it, and he's just sort of jumped at the ball and it's bounced over the keeper.
It was classic poacher's goal, wasn't it?
And then second one was another corner by Sunderland loanee Luke Molyneux, getting 2 assists, and Fraser Kerr, centre half, attacked it with a volley and whacked it in. I was like, whoa, what a goal! It's a brilliant goal that was for the game.
Yeah, so I mean that gives an impression of kind of just how interesting a range of games there were across the across non-league this weekend. I'm going to again go down the shameless self promotion route of Seaham for this week with the Seaham game. It wasn't the high scoring game. They lost 2-0 against Dunstan, who are top of the Northern League Division 1. But they did play really well. They'd lost 7-2 the previous weekend. So it was progress at least, and created a lot of chances. Went behind in the 29th minute after dominating the early stages of the game really. But Jack Elliott put them in front after a very well constructed counter-attacking move just before the half-hour mark. Then Seaham had a goal disallowed. Dan Wilson had a goal disallowed just before half-time. He was adjudged to have handled the ball after he kind of headed Matty Lowry's cross. It looked like he just headed it in from point blank range really, but it was disallowed. So it was in many ways a repeat of the hand of Rod on Friday night, but sadly the officials were slightly more hawk-eyed than they proved to be on Friday at the Hawthorns. But again, they have a very difficult job in those kind of scenarios. Second half was a bit more even, but Jake Stafford then put Dunstan 2-0 ahead in the 83rd minute to kind of seal victory really. And yeah, I think again that was another example of these teams who are top of the divisions. They just seem to have this knack. Dunstan weren't at their best by any means. I stood myself quite close to a group of their supporters, and they're obviously delighted with the win. But you did get the sense they could feel that they weren't at their best. But still, clean sheet, 2 goals, 2 very good goals as well. They've made what was quite an uncomfortable afternoon look quite comfortable on the surface. So moving on now to our players of the week. I am going to start with Harvey on this one. Who have you gone for this week?
I've gone for Alex Kawamia of Chesterfield, part of that 2-0 win we talked about earlier. Big win for them. He was on Chelsea's books a couple of years ago. Still quite young. Can play attacking midfield, up top, out wide. Very skillful player, very dangerous, but it's just consistency he's lacked over the last couple of years. Had spells at Doncaster and Crewe in League 1 and League 2. Always looked dangerous. But he seemed to have tailed off the last couple of years, but it's good to see him picking up form again, because he was a talented youngster. There's the reason he was on Chelsea's books in the first place. Because he did have a lot of promise, and to see him pop up with a goal and help Chesterfield out, it was good to see on Saturday. So yeah, Alex Kwong is my player of the week.
Yeah, I think that's often the case with young players, isn't it? They really show their potential regularly, but they can. I think it's important managers have that awareness of the need to kind of cater for dips in their form. So yeah, it's very. He's obviously a talented lad, and it's good to see him doing well the last weekend. Jake, who was your player of the week?
I could just be stealing this from Ben, which he might not be happy with, but mine is Luke Molyneux.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. No, I've got a different one in my head.
Of course, Ben's already kind of glossed over his performance
That's
against
fine.
Bromley.
A look of
Instrumental.
panic on Ben's face.
Yeah,
So you're gonna start one, I'm
disgust.
saying.
No, but he was instrumental in the win over Bromley. Of course, like Ben said, he's on loan from Sunderland. Sunderland's got for some reason a lot of young wingers, and like all of them are really talented. Like think of people like Elliot Embleton, Jack Diamond as well, and then of course Luke Molyneux as well. But he's went out on loan to Gateshead, and he's thriving, and he was instrumental as well. Like I've said, so I said, nice player of the week.
Fantastic. And lastly, on to Ben, who's your player of the week?
Not
It's
much
not
to
been
say.
stolen. So.
Not much to say about it, but a centre half getting a hat trick, you've got to go for it, really. It was Borough, wasn't it? That's the name.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't really know what else to say, but hat trick scored by a centre half is pretty impressive. I mean, especially they only conceded one goal, and so I'll let them off with not getting the clean sheet. But scoring a hat trick is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I would love to score a hat trick as a centre half. Yeah,
It's
much else to
it's
say,
not.
really.
Shame is though, you probably never got off the bench for you.
Yeah, you know what? I would shout back, but you're not really wrong.
It's not a
Spin
bad day's
facts.
work, is it? It's going beyond the brief when you're a centre half, just popping up with 3 goals. So yeah, and I'm going to go this week for Jack Elliott, who I mentioned, who plays for Dunstan, who was excellent for them at the weekend. He's kind of quite a diminutive figure, sort of physically within the Dunstan team, but anything but that in terms of the impact he has on their game and on the match as a whole at the weekend, because he was so important for them in transition and just switching from defence to attack, which were where both their goals came from, really. So yeah, Jack Elliott, who was playing kind of right side of midfield for Dunstan at the weekend. So now we are going to move on to the quiz, which may or may not have a Christmas theme, depending on how well I can organise this.
Merry Christmas.
Indeed.
Oh yeah, 'cause it's the last
Yeah,
podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the last podcast before a few weeks hiatus.
6 weeks without me.
I know. It'd be a refresher when we come back, I'd imagine.
Absolutely.
I have to do 2 podcasts.
I'll be making sure everyone keeps up with non-league over the Christmas period. Do your homework.
To be fair, next week's the FA Trophy, so I think it's not really a week off, but it's sort of away from.
Don't disrespect
conference.
the FA Trophy
Come
like
on,
that, Ben.
man.
It's a change,
Get in
isn't
the
it?
bin.
It's something slightly different for one weekend. So yes, the first question this week then is in relation.
I'm not going to do our noises, our signature noises.
Oh yes, very important point. So
You're touching over how you
what
want us.
are your signature noises going to be this week for when? Yeah, just to clarify the sort of quiz conditions to make it sound more serious than it is. I'll basically just open the question up to the floor, and you pop up with your respective noises. So Ben, which route are you going down?
Yeet.
Disgraceful.
In fact, if my brother's listening to this, I'm not going to name drop him, which I think he'll be pleased about. He he'll be very pleased with that choice.
Splash.
Splash.
That's so slowly.
Splash.
And Harvey.
Gucci.
That's I like that. That was
Confirmed as my
put you on the
final
spot there,
appearance
and
on
that
this
was
podcast.
that was a good,
It was a
right.
long 6 weeks for Jay.
I don't need to come up with a noise. No, I'm
No,
I'm
you're alright.
I'm-
Yeah, no,
I'm-
you
can if you
I'm-
want.
I'm
You just
safe
shout
this
it out.
week. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
allowed to bottle it this week. Right, so first question, and it links back to Ben's player of the week, Warren Burrell. So he's a defender, or I think he's a central midfielder turned centre back, I believe. But obviously playing at centre back at the minute, scored a hat trick at the weekend. But last season, who became the first defender to score a Champions League hat trick?
Gucci. Was it Sergio Ramos?
No, it wasn't. Good guess though, because I mean he scores a ridiculous number of goals for a defender.
Oh,
He's on penalties now, isn't he?
He forgot his noise there.
Kurzawa.
Correct.
Yes.
Maybe
Well done, Ben.
He scored a hat trick for Paris Saint-Germain in a group stage victory. I believe it was a 6-1 group stage
And it was
victory,
big.
but I can't remember. Can anyone remember who it was against?
Probably some farmers or something.
Yes, that is potentially.
I have no
the
idea.
case.
No, I'll move to
Just offended this one.
Now, a slightly more, not necessarily simplistic, but directly National League related question, and this isn't Christmas related in any way, shape or form, I'm afraid. So Leyton, Orient and Salford both suffered defeats at the weekend, which have been rarities, but can any of you name how many defeats they have over the course of the season respectively
Splash.
in the league? Jake?
2.
One of them has 2. Can you name?
Oh, sorry. 2 and
Right.
3.
2 and 3, correct.
Yeah.
For a bonus point, can you get it the right way around? I'm being properly cruel here, like
Leyton Orient have 2, and Salford have 3.
spot on.
Smashed it.
Spot on. So we'll say, as it stands, we have Ben on 1 and Jake on 2. Next question. I'm hoping to get a Christmas-related one in at some stage, but might just need to bear with me.
It's a Neil Farrington style quiz, this, isn't it?
It is.
Very
It's,
last sort of thing.
I might need to come up with.
Might listen to this,
with
like.
the
I know, he's gonna be
conveniently
marking
hard
this.
question.
Yeah, it's going to be
Hi,
Mark.
Neil. Hope you're doing well.
Oh yeah, I forgot because we put
Have a good Christmas, Neil.
How's the kids?
What's the kids?
And yes, so can you guys name the 4 teams? Again, it's a bit of a simplistic National League question. The 4 teams in the National League relegation zone.
Gucci.
And shall we say?
Right.
I can offer a bonus point for in the right order if you get it, but it'll be a point.
Right, so Braintree are bottom.
That's correct.
Then it's, I want to say Maidstone,
They are in the relegation.
but I've not got the right order.
No, but you're still on for the point.
Dover are in there.
Dover are in there.
Right, okay. This is where he needs to
I
get the
know- I
thinking
know.
cap on.
I know who it is.
Because I have completely forgot, but I will tell you. Just
I'm
bear
ready
with
to make
me
it splash.
a moment.
I'm waiting for Mikey.
Rush him.
Is it Maidenhead?
Correct.
Damn
Very
it!
well
I
done.
knew it.
It's
as
a
well.
noob move.
I knew it. I knew which order it was.
So I won't off. Well, shall I open it up to all of you to? I'll give Jake and Ben the chance to get it in the right order. Harvey's got the point for getting the teams.
Right.
In fact, I'll offer half a point because Harvey's kind of done
All right.
Done the work.
Done the work. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeet.
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 Braintree, Maidenhead, Maidstone, Dover. Good up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Close. Do you fancy having a go, Jake?
Braintree,
Cool.
Maidenhead,
Incorrect. it is tough. That was a pretty cruel question.
Can I have a go?
You can indeed.
Fraudulent.
Hold
Move
on a
it.
minute.
Moving on.
Braintree, Maidstone, Maidenhead, Dover.
No, it's. I think it is quite surprising because Dover had that brilliant result at the weekend, but it's Braintree on 14, Dover on 18, Maidstone 19, and Maidenhead 21. But in many ways, that's a sign of the positive impact a win can have, because we're all in denial at how low Dover actually are,
Yeah.
because of how good that win was for them over the weekend. So next question, I'm hoping there'll be a Christmas one coming, but the my levels of planning are failing me on this. So Salford beaten by Chesterfield over the weekend. Now Chesterfield had this amazing record of drawing all over again. I mean they are pretty much the footballing example of well, I don't know, just a Democrat, because they won't get beaten or won't lose to anyone. But can you tell me how many draws in the National League they had in a row?
Yeet. I'm gonna say, I don't know if this is actually right, because I feel like I knew the number. Now I don't. 11.
I think you're correct. I'm having to double check myself. Again, this is another sign of the top-notch planning that's gone into this.
I had two numbers in my head, but I.
So they drew 0-0 with Solihull Moors. I'm gonna say you're right, because that was the number in my head over my head last night. But if either of Jake or Harvey discover that to be wrong, then you're more than welcome to go in on me later
Harry
this afternoon.
claim it.
Oh God.
Right.
We'll jump in on the first podcast back after Christmas and we'll bring it up straight away.
Indeed.
We'll rescind it if it's
No.
wrong.
I'll have forgotten all about it by then, and it will. I'll have a flashback to pre-Christmas. Now I'm going to try and find a Christmas-based question. You may just need to bear with me for a second. In the meantime, how do you guys fancy telling us about what you're going to be up to over the weekend? Football or non-football related? So I'll start with Ben.
I don't think there's any football for me this weekend, which is quite surprising. Off the top of my head, no, because Newcastle are also playing away, so yeah, I'm not going to that game. Gates are away to Salford in the FA Trophy. Big game, but kind of go to Salford. Just don't have enough time. Yeah, apart from that, I don't actually know. I think I'm relaxing or possibly doing essays this weekend, but nothing really sport related this time.
I'm working again, but
No surprise.
that's alright. I'll just let more people talk. Go on, Harvey.
Mr. Sainsbury's.
Well, Friday night, Sheffield United are on Sky again.
Again.
They can't have enough for us. I think that's 4 weekends in a row now.
I think
Yeah,
we're
Rotherham, Leeds, Reading,
Is it
West Brom.
Oh.
West Brom, Friday night, under the lights. We'll probably lose, but we'll hopefully just give it a go. So
Gracefully.
it's a big game at top of the championship, so look, I'm really looking forward
Who's
to
at home?
watching that. We're at home.
That's good.
And so yeah, I'm hoping for a good game there. And then Saturday, nothing. It'll be bets, soccer Saturday, beers, and yeah, that's about it. And then actually, no, and packing, because Sunday morning I am off home for Christmas.
Oh, all these are. Well,
So same here.
I live at home.
I've got a train journey home on the Saturday evening back down to Evesham in Worcestershire. Big up Evesham. And yeah, and then on Sunday I'm hoping to watch in some shape or form that small northwest derby that's happening at
Oh, I
4
forgot about that game. Yeah, I'll probably watch
Liverpool
that.
versus Manchester
Is that Sunday?
United.
Is that Sunday?
Yeah, it's 4 o'clock Sunday.
pencil it in.
And yeah, so I'm hoping from Liverpool fans' perspective that we can continue the positive form. Now I'm afraid I'm going to have to bottle a Christmas question.
That's fine.
But
It's too hard.
Yeah, because the person who Luke's these rooms is gonna pencil us in for the death penalty if we don't get
Yeah.
out here.
I think they could have put a pencil in us because
Lead poison.
that could be more accurate. We do need to lodge our escape and allow the editing to take place. But we can say that the Christmas theme has been reflected by the Christmas spirit exhibited throughout the room during the course of this podcast. So we'll just round it off for this week and for 2018 by saying thank you very much for those of you who've been kind enough to listen to us over the last few weeks, and you'll hear us again after Christmas, probably sometime in late January, we're thinking.
Yeah, around then, I'd say.
So thank you very much, goodbye, and have a great Christmas, everybody.